Did you know that one of the most powerful messages inside the royal family may not have come from the king, but from a queen who is no longer here? For months, the world has watched the growing silence around Catherine, Princess of Wales. Every appearance, every photograph, every official statement has been examined by millions. But behind the palace walls, there was reportedly one private message from the late Queen Elizabeth II that few people were ever meant to hear. And according to insiders, it was Princess Anne who finally revealed it. The moment that message surfaced, both Prince William and King Charles III were said to be left completely speechless. Because what the Queen said about Kate may change how the royal family sees her forever. And what came next could reshape the future of the monarchy itself. Inside the royal family, some of the most powerful moments never happen in front of cameras. They happen behind heavy doors, in private drawing rooms, where even the closest aides are sometimes asked to leave. And according to palace insiders, one of those moments left both Prince William and King Charles III in complete silence after Princess Anne quietly revealed a message from the late Queen Elizabeth II about Catherine, Princess of Wales. That alone was unusual, because Anne has always been known as the one royal who does not speak unless she believes something truly matters. Unlike other members of the family, she has spent decades avoiding attention while earning a reputation as one of the hardest-working royals in modern history. In fact, royal records have often shown Anne carrying out more official engagements than almost anyone else in the family, sometimes even more than the monarch himself. That is why people pay attention when she talks. And what she reportedly shared was not just another family memory. It was something far more serious. Sources close to the palace claimed and reminded the family of a private conversation she once had with the Queen years before Kate fully stepped into her future role. At the time, the world still saw Kate as graceful, careful, and composed, but few understood how closely the Queen had been watching her. The late Queen rarely offered personal opinions. That was one of the most surprising parts of royal life. Even family members often had to guess what she truly felt because she almost never revealed her private thoughts openly. Her discipline was legendary. Some former staff even said she could say more with a single glance than others could say in an hour. But this time was different. According to insiders, and revealed that the Queen once described Kate as someone who possessed a quiet steel that the monarchy would one day need. Those words reportedly changed the mood in the room instantly. Because inside royal circles, praise from the Queen was extremely rare. And when it came, it usually meant she had seen something that others had missed. For William, the message may have felt deeply personal. For Charles, it may have felt far more complicated. Because if the Queen had truly seen Kate as a future pillar of the monarchy, then the family may have been forced to confront a truth they had not fully acknowledged before. Kate was no longer simply William's wife. She may have become something much bigger. And that raised one unsettling question. What exactly had the Queen seen in Kate that left the future of the monarchy suddenly feeling very different? For years, the public believed they understood Kate. She was seen as calm, elegant, and almost impossibly careful. She smiled at public events, spoke with measured confidence, and rarely allowed emotion to slip through in front of cameras. To millions watching around the world, Catherine, Princess of Wales, looked like the perfect modern royal. But according to people who spent time inside palace walls, the woman the public saw was only part of the story. The late Queen Elizabeth II was said to have noticed that long before anyone else. Unlike the newspapers, the Queen did not judge people by headlines. She watched how they behaved when no cameras were around. She noticed how they treated staff. She noticed who remained calm when pressure filled the room. And perhaps most importantly, she noticed who understood duty without needing it explained. That was where Kate stood apart. One palace source once claimed the Queen admired how Kate adjusted to royal life without trying to change it. That may sound simple, but inside the monarchy, that is incredibly rare. Many who marry into the royal family struggle under the pressure. Some resist palace tradition. Others feel crushed by endless rules. Kate did something different. She listened. That was the hidden truth very few people understood. While others saw glamour, the Queen reportedly saw discipline. While others saw style, the Queen saw patience. And while the public praised Kate for appearing polished, the Queen was said to admire the strength it took to remain steady while living under constant global scrutiny. That strength mattered more than most people realized. Royal insiders have often said the Queen believed survival of the monarchy depended less on grand speeches and more on quiet endurance. The crown had survived wars, divorces, scandals, and betrayals not because every royal was loved, but because someone in each generation understood how to hold everything together. And according to Anne, the Queen believed Kate could become that person. The most surprising part was when that realization reportedly happened. Sources suggest the Queen began seeing Kate differently after several private family gatherings where tensions quietly surfaced behind the scenes. During difficult moments, when conversations became strained and emotions ran high, Kate was said to remain calm while others became defensive. She did not interrupt. She did not take sides. She simply listened. That may have reminded the Queen of something familiar. Because those who knew Elizabeth well often said one of her greatest strengths was silence. She understood that in royal life, the person who says the least can sometimes understand the most. And that may be why the Queen's private message carried such weight. According to Anne's alleged recollection, the Queen once said that Kate had the patience of a queen before she ever wears a crown. That was an extraordinary statement, because the Queen did not casually compare anyone to the future of the monarchy. For William, hearing those words years later may have confirmed what he already knew privately. But for others in the family, it may have forced a difficult realization. Kate was no longer simply adapting to royal life. She may have already become essential to it. And yet one question remained. If the Queen recognized Kate's importance so early, why was that message kept hidden until now? The moment whispers of the Queen's private message began spreading, the media moved fast. In the world of royalty, even the smallest rumor can become international news within hours. But this was not just another palace whisper. This involved a deeply personal statement from the late Queen Elizabeth II, and a message that appeared to place Catherine, Princess of Wales, at the center of the monarchy's future. That changed everything. News outlets began asking the same question. Did the Queen quietly see Kate as the woman who could protect the crown after her? Royal commentators quickly revisited years of old footage. Clips that once seemed ordinary suddenly looked very different. People noticed the way the Queen smiled at Kate during official events. They noticed how often the two women appeared comfortable together. Even small gestures, like a shared glance inside a carriage, suddenly felt loaded with meaning. And once that happened, the story grew bigger. Some newspapers described it as a hidden royal endorsement. Others called it a silent transfer of trust. That language created a new wave of speculation. Because in royal history, the media has always played a dangerous role. Sometimes it protects the monarchy. Sometimes it exposes it. And sometimes it accidentally reveals truths the palace wanted buried. That has happened before. When Diana, Princess of Wales, gave her now famous television interview in 1995, millions watched as the royal family lost control of the narrative in a single night. That interview changed how the public viewed the monarchy forever. And now, some feared this new story could trigger another shift. Because this time, the media was not reporting scandal. It was reporting significance. That can be even harder for a palace to manage. According to insiders, royal aides quickly realized that public sympathy was moving strongly toward Kate. Many people began praising her not just as the future queen, but as someone the late queen herself may have trusted above others. That was powerful. Because public affection inside the royal family can quietly reshape influence. And the palace knows that better than anyone. Reports suggested that communication teams at Buckingham Palace began monitoring every headline carefully. Not because the story was openly damaging, but because it was emotionally persuasive. And emotional stories often become the hardest to contain. The challenge was simple. If the palace denied the reports, they risked making them bigger. If they stayed silent, people would assume the story was true. That placed the family in an uncomfortable position. Especially for King Charles III, who has spent years trying to modernize the monarchy while protecting its fragile image. The last thing the palace needed was another deeply personal royal narrative escaping into public view. But what made this different was one troubling detail. Some royal watchers began wondering whether the message was leaked by accident at all. Because Princess Anne has never been careless with words. And if Anne chose to speak, many believed she may have had a reason. Which raised an even bigger question. Was this simply a family memory becoming public? Or was someone inside the palace deliberately preparing the world for Kate's future? Inside the royal family, the hardest battles are not fought in public. They are fought in silence. And according to insiders, the alleged revelation shared by Princess and about the late Queen's message created exactly that kind of silence inside the palace. At the center of it all stood Catherine, Princess of Wales, a figure now surrounded by admiration from the public, but also growing sensitivity within the royal household. Because admiration inside the monarchy is never simple. It always comes with consequences. For Prince William, the message reportedly felt deeply personal. According to palace watchers, William has always carried a strong emotional connection to his late grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II. So hearing that she may have quietly placed trust in Kate's strength may have reinforced something he already believed. But for others in the family, the interpretation may have been more complicated. Because if Kate was truly seen as a stabilizing force by the Queen herself, then her role inside the monarchy was no longer just supportive. It was central. And that shift can create tension in any royal system built on hierarchy. One of the most talked about moments, according to insiders, was a private discussion where and allegedly repeated the Queen's words about Kate's quiet steel. The phrase itself may sound simple, but inside royal circles, language matters. Every word carries weight. Every description shapes perception. And that phrase suggested something powerful. Endurance under pressure. Stability under scrutiny. Strength without spectacle. Those qualities are rare in any public institution, but especially rare in the royal family, where every action is magnified globally. Some insiders claim that during that private discussion, there was a moment of uncomfortable silence. Not disagreement. Not argument. Just silence. And in royal life, silence often says more than words ever could. King Charles III is said to have taken a more measured view. As monarch, his responsibility is not just emotional, it is institutional. Every perception, every shift in public narrative, can affect the stability of the crown. So the idea that Kate may already be viewed by the public as a key pillar of the monarchy may have created a subtle tension. Not conflict, but awareness. Because once the public assigns symbolic importance to a royal figure, that perception becomes very difficult to reverse. History has shown this before. When Diana, Princess of Wales, became the people's princess, it changed how the world interacted with the monarchy forever. It was not just popularity, it was emotional ownership from the public. And now, some royal observers quietly wonder if something similar, though far less chaotic, is forming around Kate. But inside the family, things are never that simple. There are loyalties. There are expectations. And there are long memories of past royal fractures that still shape present decisions. Some historians have drawn comparisons to previous royal tensions, where admiration from the public created invisible divides within the family itself. Not because anyone acted against each other directly, but because perception slowly shifts relationships over time. That is what makes this situation delicate. Because if Anne's revelation is accurate, then it does not just elevate Kate's image. It also reshapes how other members of the family are seen in comparison. And that is where discomfort can begin. Yet even with that tension, no one inside the palace reportedly challenged Anne directly. Because she is not someone who speaks lightly. And if she chose to repeat the Queen's message now, then the family may be forced to confront something they were not fully prepared for. That Kate's role may already have evolved beyond what anyone publicly acknowledged. But the biggest question still remains unanswered. Was this revelation meant to unify the family around Kate? Or quietly expose a divide that was already forming behind closed doors? When royal stories move from whispers to headlines, the palace response usually becomes very controlled. But this situation, according to insiders, created a different kind of pressure. Because the alleged message from the late Queen Elizabeth II about Catherine, Princess of Wales, was not a scandal in the traditional sense. There were no accusations, no legal wrongdoing, no formal complaint. And that made it harder to contain. Instead, it became a question of influence. And influence inside the monarchy is always sensitive. Behind the scenes, palace advisors are believed to have discussed whether any legal or formal clarification was needed to protect the institution's image. Not because anything illegal was claimed, but because royal communications are tightly controlled under constitutional tradition and long-standing media protocols. The royal household has strict rules about privacy, official statements, and the handling of private conversations attributed to senior royals. Historically, even small misinterpretations have led to formal corrections. But this situation was different, because it involved a deceased monarch. Once a figure like Queen Elizabeth II passes away, their private words become impossible to verify or deny in a legal sense. That creates what some constitutional experts call a closed authority gap, a situation where interpretation replaces confirmation. And in that space, narratives grow quickly. Public reaction was immediate and divided. Many people embraced the idea that the Queen had quietly trusted Kate as a future pillar of the monarchy. They saw it as a moment of continuity, where the values of stability and duty were passed forward. Others were more cautious. Some commentators warned that attributing private political or familial intent to a deceased monarch can reshape historical perception without official confirmation. In royal law discussions, this touches on long-standing principles about the protection of institutional reputation, even after death. Still, the story spread faster than any official clarification could keep up with. For King Charles III, this created a delicate balancing act. As monarch, he cannot easily engage with every rumor. But he also carries responsibility for preserving the dignity of the crown. Too much silence can look like confirmation. Too much response can amplify attention. That is the legal and PR paradox of modern monarchy. And it became even more complicated because public sentiment was not negative. In fact, it was largely supportive of Kate. That may sound like a positive outcome, but inside the institution, it can still create structural concerns. Because once a royal figure becomes widely viewed as indispensable, it can shift expectations around their role, visibility, and influence. That is not something the monarchy formally assigns through law. It is something the public creates through perception. And perception is powerful. Historically, the royal family has faced similar moments where public emotion outpaced official structure. In earlier decades, the press coverage surrounding Diana, Princess of Wales, showed how quickly public admiration can become a force that reshapes institutional behavior. That memory still exists within royal strategy discussions today. And it likely influenced how carefully officials observed the reaction to Anne's alleged revelation. Privately, some insiders suggested that the palace's biggest concern was not legal action in the traditional sense. It was precedent. Because once private royal messages, especially emotional or symbolic ones, enter public discourse, they can redefine how future royal statements are interpreted. That is a long-term reputational issue, not just a short-term media event. For Kate personally, the impact was quieter but still significant. She has always maintained a careful distance from controversy. Her public role is built on consistency rather than confrontation. But suddenly, she was at the center of a narrative about legacy, trust, and succession-level symbolism. That kind of attention is difficult to ignore, even if you do not seek it. And yet, there was no official response from the palace confirming or denying the alleged message. Just silence. And in royal history, silence often becomes part of the story itself. As public discussion continued, one question started to grow louder behind the headlines. Was this simply a misunderstood family memory being amplified? Or was something far more intentional shaping how the monarchy wants Kate to be seen in the future? And if so, who inside the palace truly benefits from that narrative becoming reality? In the royal world, endings rarely arrive with a clear announcement. They arrive quietly, slowly, almost invisibly. And that is exactly how this story began to settle inside the public imagination after the alleged message from the late Queen Elizabeth II about Catherine, Princess of Wales, continued spreading through media circles. No official confirmation came. No denial either. Just silence from Buckingham Palace. And that silence became part of the narrative. For Prince William and King Charles III, insiders suggest the situation was less about reacting publicly and more about managing perception internally. Because once a royal story reaches emotional momentum, it becomes almost impossible to reverse without drawing more attention to it. And this story had emotional momentum. The idea that the Queen may have seen Kate as a stabilizing force in the future of the monarchy began to shape public conversation in a powerful way. People were no longer just discussing royal duty. They were discussing legacy. And legacy is the most sensitive word in any monarchy. Within palace thinking, Kate was already known for her calm consistency. She rarely steps outside carefully defined boundaries. She does not rush into public debate. She avoids unnecessary controversy. And over time, that has created a reputation of reliability. Now, that reputation had taken on something bigger. Symbolic weight. Some royal observers believe that if the Queen truly did express private confidence in Kate, even informally, then it reflects a long-term pattern in how the monarchy adapts. Historically, the crown has always depended on figures who bring balance during transition periods. That is not written in law. It is written in survival. And survival has always been the monarchy's quiet priority. What makes this moment unique is how modern it feels. In earlier generations, such private royal impressions would have remained inside palace archives or family memory. But in the digital age, even second-hand recollections can become global narratives within hours. And once they become global, they begin to shape identity. Not just for the person involved, but for the institution itself. King Charles III now leads a monarchy that is constantly being interpreted in real time. Every silence is analyzed. Every gesture is recorded. Every absence becomes a headline. In today's royal world, even private family stories can shape how the public sees the future of the crown. Insiders call this less a scandal and more a narrative shift. Nothing illegal happened. Nothing official changed. But something subtle moved. Kate's image in the public mind grew stronger, and in royal terms, that is real influence. Princess Anne is seen as a disciplined, no-drama royal, so her alleged reference to the Queen's message is viewed not as gossip, but as a reminder of what the late Queen valued: stability, duty, and endurance. Once that idea entered public discussion, everything changed. Every royal appearance started to feel symbolic. Every silence felt meaningful. Every role looked bigger than before. But the truth remains unconfirmed. And that uncertainty is exactly what keeps the story alive. Did the Queen truly shape Kate's future role, or is the world just interpreting memories in its own way? Either way, the story doesn't really end. It keeps evolving with time, perception, and belief.